Welcome to the Pole Shift News. In this video I'm going to drop a data bomb, some critical information that ultimately proves that what the organisations such as NASA, ESA, etc. are putting out there is somewhat conflicting. The reason why I'm doing it is to encourage a few more people to support this channel with a contribution. It's important that we get the word out. At the moment, there is, some of you already know, a big cover-up going on, and they're selling climate as global warming. I've showed the data, many other sites have showed the data, but what I want to do in particular is a very short video on here where we gather some data from NASA, we look at some of the data with regards to sunspots, and we make our own analysis based on that data. So let's get on with it. We're looking at the last three solar cycles. Solar cycle 22, solar cycle 23, and solar cycle 24. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that these sunspot numbers have been dwindling since at least 1985. And at the current time, in 2016, we should be just coming out of solar maximum. Some of you may not know what solar maximum and solar minimum is, and in conjunction with that, where we are supposed to be looking on the solar disk for those sunspots, that gives us an indication of where we are in that solar period. We don't need to track the cycles themselves. Just by looking at where the sunspots are located on the disk should give us an idea as to whether we are in a solar maximum or solar minimum. But what I want you to concentrate on here is the fact that we are in 2016, and you can see that we should be just on the back end of a solar maximum and still experiencing many sunspots. That's the key point I wish to make here in this video.
The Sun also has a long-term, more regular pattern of change. This pattern is called the sunspot cycle, and a single cycle lasts for about 11 years, although it can be as short as 8 or as long as 14, and it can vary dramatically in intensity. During one cycle, the number of sunspots, a good indicator of solar activity, goes from low to high and back down to low. Solar minimum represents a period of time when sunspot numbers are relatively low, and solar maximum represents a period when sunspot numbers are relatively high. During this cycle, the location of the sunspots also changes. They are at middle latitudes during solar maximum, and move closer to the equator as the Sun approaches solar minimum. At solar minimum, there are sometimes no sunspots to observe. At solar maximum, there can be many at the same time. The number of sunspots is important because sunspots are the visual markers of where powerful magnetic fields have emerged from the Sun's interior. These magnetic fields power solar flares and coronal mass ejections, which can affect Earth and other objects in the solar system. As the sunspots increase, so does the frequency and severity of flares and CMEs.
Okay, so just so you're following then, solar maximum, sunspots should be located on the solar disk at around 30 degrees north and 30 degrees south. During solar minimum, there are fewer sunspots, but they are located more around the equatorial region of the solar disk. Now, you noted on that video where it came from, NASA Goddard Flight Space Center, and also want you to note where this data comes from, NASA MSFC. Now, let's go and have a look at some of the recent sunspots and see where just they're located. Let's disregard the whole solar cycle just for 1 minute and just concentrate on where the sunspots are located on the disk to give us an indication of whether we're in a minimum or a maximum. Now, just bear in mind we're in 2016, so we're just coming out of the maximum according to this data that we're looking at from NASA, and you've just seen the video telling us where the sunspots should be during a minimum and a maximum. Let's have a look where they are then. Okay, so we're over at SolarHam, a good website for supplying solar data. But as you can see, sunspot region 2578 and 2574 are very much equatorial. Also, I'm going to show the last months and the months prior to this sunspots. You will see that there are very few sunspots, that there has been days with no sunspots, and that they are all pretty much equatorial. Now, from that data alone, it tells us 100% that the sun is actually in a solar minimum and not coming out the back of a solar maximum. And it's really important, guys. This is what, I stress on this channel. Sometimes I don't repeat all the facts all the time, because I take it that some of you are following it, not just from the data that I present on this channel, but from other channels. I assume that you've got a sort of basic foundation in the topic of sunspots. I mean, I could actually look at the discrepancies in the actual calculations of the way they calculate sunspots, and that would be another video. But the important point I wish to make here is that the sunspots are equatorial and therefore indicating solar minimum, yet we are supposed to be in a solar maximum. And this is something that's not hit mainstream media. They've not talked about it on the mainstream, and you have to ask the question, why is that? Think about the markets and how the markets are affected just by the weather. Think about the amount of people that are on this planet right now, 7 billion, and how important it is for those to get their hands on the staples that they need to survive. Right? If you have a bit of knowledge that at some point in the future things are going to change, and dramatically change, that it's going to affect those staples, inevitably it's going to affect commodities, and it's going to put some people in a position to profit massively from this. Not only that, secure themselves before any others are even aware of it. That's how important simple information such as solar data can be to those few people. You know who these few people are, and you now know the reasons why they probably wouldn't want to publicly announce the data that I'm showing on this video. It's very important, and it can be a serious game changer. Think about what happened during the Maunder minimum. When sunspots dropped off. Think about what happened in the Dalton minimum, and think about also how they're trying to sell global warming with regards to CO2. Think about how much they've changed, and in my view, I could only describe it as screwed up industry as a result of that false information that they have put out regarding CO2. Driving the climate higher. What they've said is completely the opposite, and what I believe is to happen is some serious events to unfold in the next couple of decades. And the reason why I say next couple of decades is because, we are talking about things with very large inertias, and therefore they take changes in gradual steps. But nevertheless, it is important that this data gets out to people. So here are the sunspots then for this month, August. As you can see, at the beginning of the month there was even a couple of days where we had no sunspots, but pretty much all equatorial. I want to point out something else there. Have you noticed they always number the sunspot underneath the sunspot? That's to push it down probably a little bit more, make it look like it's not equatorial. But as you can see, on the whole, most of these sunspots are equatorial, and as we are experiencing also days without sunspots, should be more than an indicator to satisfy anybody at what period of the solar cycle we are in right now, and that is the minimum. Let's have a look at the month prior to this. So here we are in July 2016, again, from the 1st to the 5th, no sunspots whatsoever. But then from then on, mostly equatorial sunspots only. And again, at the end of July, no sunspots on the disk again. Well, I hope that confirms what I'm saying in this video, and you appreciate the data bomb, to use an analogy of what I've tried to explain and show you here. And I hope it encourages a few more people to support the channel. So just before I end this video, guys, if you thought the information regarding sunspots was misleading, then I can tell you this one thing only, if nothing else. The information with regards to the magnetic poles right now is far worse. Much, much worse. And the repercussions of the magnetic North Pole migrating right now will be much, much worse than, the lacking of sunspots and the effects that will have. Trying to, put the two together and come up with some conclusions as to possibly what we're looking at in the near future is a very difficult task. And, that is why, I ask people to support this channel. If we can just spread the awareness of what's taking place right now, that's something. If we can develop, as we're trying to on this channel, equipment that can monitor it firsthand, monitor the depleting magnetosphere and the migrating North Pole, track it accurately with the equipment that is part built now, then, we can give people a heads up as to, possibly when to expect the worst to happen, which is when the magnetic field goes out of the strong field lines into the weak field lines and does its reversal. The other thing is, as I've said many times before, nothing is guaranteed in this next magnetic reversal that it will reconnect, or go through its reversal completely. And that is because there is such a large period of time since the last magnetic reversal, as opposed to the reoccurring reversals prior to that. On average, it was 350,000 years and then a reversal. This time, it's been 780,000 years. But the important thing is, guys, is we're living in the time period of when it is going through a reversal, and unfortunately, at a period of time when the sun has chosen to go through a solar minimum. So, at the worst, we can expect, a global cooling because of the sunspots, and then whatever else as a result of the magnetic North Pole migrating. We are in for some very serious times on this planet, and right now, yes, most of us here in the West go about our daily duties very normally, enjoying things relatively calm. It's not going to be like that. I said this is going to take place in our life. Within the last 2 years, we've seen the magnetic North Pole deviate off its vector towards Siberia and head towards the United Kingdom. It's going in a southeasterly vector now. And that is an indication that it's almost, on our doorsteps. That's why I ask people to support this channel. So, as usual, guys, the link will be down there, and help support it. On the last few videos, we've managed to get over 20,000 views. That's 20,000 people that have been informed about this event. That's not a bad thing. Join us. I'm going to say what I usually do, guys. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'll be back with some more data, and hopefully a bit of progression on some of the equipment that we're building, because I think it's about time I did a video on that, in all fairness. So I'll say what I usually do. Bye for now.